Someone put a howitzer on a Humvee, and it works. Here's the cheat code: 105mm artillery cannon mounted on a Humvee. Sounds like something my butter bar lieutenant would have proposed after 3 rippets and a map he was holding upside down. And for most of military history, physics, Newton, and any sane brigade commander would have killed that idea before it left the wire. You can't put a full-sized artillery piece on a light tactical vehicle. The recoil forces would turn the chassis into scrap after a 3rd volley. Plus, anyone inside would look like Ace Ventura 2 when nature calls. Newton's second law doesn't negotiate, and yet someone figured out how to cheat. Hey friends, I'm Wes O'Donnell, defense journalist, Army infantry veteran, Air Force veteran, and somebody mentioned recently in my comments what an amazing green screen I have behind me. How dare you, sir or madam? I am a professional. Okay, so what are we talking about today? A cutting-edge technology called soft recoil technology. The system is called the 2CT Hawkeye. It's a 105mm howitzer mounted on M1152 Humvee, developed by AM General and Mandis Group. It's been operating in Ukraine since spring of 2024, in the most artillery-intensive war since the Second World War. Now, AM General's program director Mike Evans confirmed it publicly at the U.S. Field Artillery Association's Fires Symposium in May of 2024. And his words were, quote, "We recently put a 2CT Hawkeye system into Ukraine. We shipped it in April. It's going into combat to test on live targets." End quote. That was 2 years ago, and most people haven't heard about it since. The silence around this system is actually part of the story. But first, let's talk about why the physics of putting a cannon on a Humvee was supposed to be impossible. When a cannon fires, the explosion that sends the round downrange also sends an equal and opposite force back through the gun. That's recoil. Managing that force is the central engineering challenge of every artillery system ever built. The heavier and more powerful the gun, the more structure you need underneath it to absorb what it produces. Let's consider the numbers. The M777 lightweight towed howitzer, specifically designed for portability, weighs 4,200 pounds. The M109 Paladin is 62,000 pounds. The French Caesar, considered exceptionally light for a wheeled 155mm system, still weighs 18 tons. Every pound of that is partly there because the physics of recoil demands something big enough to take the hit. Now, a Humvee weighs about 5,500 pounds unloaded. Asking it to absorb the recoil of a 105mm cannon is like asking your grandmother to take a tackle from an NFL linebacker. The answer is no, and the consequences are vivid. So the engineers at Mandis Group asked a different question. What if we didn't try to absorb the recoil? What if we changed when the recoil arrives? Here's how it works. In a traditional howitzer, the round fires, and all that force arrives at once. A brutal spike that the platform has to be massive enough to survive. Soft recoil reverses the sequence. The cannon sits in its cradle under tension from an internal gas spring. When the fire control system initiates the firing sequence, it releases the barrel assembly and drives it forward along its guides at speed through a predetermined run-up distance. At the exact moment the barrel reaches maximum forward travel, then the round fires. The explosive force now has to stop the barrel's forward momentum before it can start to push backwards. According to the underlying patent documentation, nearly half of the firing energy gets consumed just stopping that forward motion. The remaining rearward force is absorbed by a conventional recoil system. Peak force delivered to the vehicle is down by up to 60%. Think of it like bending your knees when you land from a jump. Same total force spread over a longer movement, and your legs survive it. The Hawkeye bends the gun's knees before the round fires by giving the barrel somewhere forward to go first. That's the physics. Now, here's why it took a century to make it work. Soft recoil isn't a new idea. Engineers figured out the basic concept before the First World War. A crude version appeared on an Italian mountain gun that was still in service after the Second World War. In the 1970s, the U.S. Army tried again with the XM204, a lightweight 155mm howitzer specifically built around soft recoil. It failed, and the German Arms Museum at Koblenz has the prototype. The museum placard is, by all accounts, not flattering. But the problem was always the same: timing, triggering the round at exactly the right microsecond in the barrel's forward travel. That's genuinely hard. Too early and you lose most of the recoil benefit. Too late and you're firing as the barrel decelerates. Same problem in reverse. The timing window is narrow and the consequences of missing it are big. But 21st century electronics solved it. Sensors, processors, and digital fire control systems that didn't exist in any practical form in the 1970s can now track the barrel's position with enough precision to trigger the firing at the correct moment, repeatedly, under field conditions. The Field Artillery Association's own technical write-up on the system puts it bluntly: almost no human labor is involved in the preparation for firing, nor displacing. The gun does the timing itself. And I want to stay with the knee analogy for a second because it's the one that actually makes the engineering click. When you bend your knees on landing, you're spreading the same total impact force over a longer distance and time. That's what the Hawkeye does to recoil. My knees, after 2 service branches and a decade of decisions that looked better at the time than they do in retrospect, no longer bend the way they're supposed to. The Hawkeye's recoil mechanism honestly has me beat on this. But what that means in practical terms: 90 seconds from rolling stop to first round, 8 rounds downrange in the first 3 minutes, a target range of 11.6 kilometers on standard ammunition and almost 20 on extended range rounds, and the system can be driving away before the counter-battery radar finishes its solution. Now, the honest part: Ukraine isn't publishing Yelp reviews of prototype artillery. As of now, there are no major public battlefield reports confirming the Hawkeye is either a success or a failure. No official Ukrainian assessments, no public after-action reviews, no comparison against the Caesar or the M777, just operational silence. Now that silence is probably a good thing. Ukraine has a well-documented and unsentimental relationship with equipment that doesn't perform. Systems that fail at the tactical level become known. Drone footage surfaces, mill bloggers talk, Telegram threads get angry. If the Hawkeye had been failing catastrophically, the open source community would have found it by now. What we do know: AM General described the system as combat proven at AUSA 2024. Ukraine apparently continued using it after initial evaluation, and AM General unveiled a next-generation version at AUSA 2025, directly citing the Ukraine experience as part of the development process. Companies don't build second generations of systems that embarrass them in their first combat trial. In October 2024, India's Bharat Forge signed a multi-party agreement with AM General and Mandis Group to co-develop and co-produce next-generation artillery platforms built around this soft recoil technology, explicitly targeting both 105mm and 155mm applications. What I'm saying is, countries don't sign manufacturing agreements for systems that failed. But 155mm is the big boy. So far, Ukraine has been testing the 105. 105mm is the proof of concept. The brass ring is scaling soft recoil up to 155, the NATO standard caliber, on a platform light enough to move and hide like a Humvee. If that works, a significant portion of the Western artillery weight problem starts looking solvable. Heavy, slow, predictably positioned artillery dies on this battlefield. The old Soviet approach: park the gun, fire the mission, smoke a stale cigarette, relocate eventually, now carries survival odds roughly equivalent to standing in the Donbas at midnight wearing a reflective vest. Ukraine's artillery survival doctrine evolved accordingly: shoot fast, shoot accurately, and leave before the counter-battery cycle closes. The RCH-155 I just covered in Monday's video gets there through automation and a fast-wheeled chassis. The Hawkeye gets there by making the gun light enough that any vehicle can carry it and any terrain can hide it. And that last point is where the real doctrine shift lives. If you can put an effective artillery on a Hummer, you can put artillery anywhere a Humvee can go. Small units in dispersed, drone-era combat can carry organic fires instead of waiting and hoping something's available. Artillery that currently sits massed in battery positions Large, lucrative drone targets can disperse across a wide area, each platform too small and too mobile to justify the ISR investment required to hunt it. In the United States, for some reason, they called us in the infantry the Queen of Battle, and they called artillery the King of Battle. And we're finally seeing the King and the Queen join together, infantry and artillery sharing a chassis. Now, entire infantry squads are gonna have to go to artillery school because we're turning artillery into something infantry can use on a Humvee. This is a major change in warfare, friends. So the Hawkeye is a weird, probably underproduced 105mm step towards something bigger. It's not there yet. The 155mm version doesn't exist yet. The India partnership is promising, but early, and the combat record from Ukraine remains officially unconfirmed. The Archer, the Caesar, the K9 Thunder all solve the shoot-and-scoot survival problem from different engineering angles. Soft recoil isn't the only answer, but it's the answer a Humvee can carry. And that's a category no one else is competing in. Somewhere between the Humvee with a cannon and the next generation 155mm platform that doesn't exist yet, a genuine architectural shift in how armies deploy fires is trying to happen. Maybe my butter bar lieutenant wasn't as bat crazy as we thought he was. He was probably still holding the map upside down, but on the artillery question, probably ahead of his time. That's it for today, my friends. If you want to follow where this story goes, especially the 155mm development and whatever Ukraine eventually confirms or doesn't, hit subscribe. It's the best free way to support what I do here. I cover this stuff 4 times a week on video, and the next chapter on this system is coming soon. I have a feeling. Memberships here are about $3 a month, and it's what keeps this analysis going. And for the longer reads, the ones that go deeper than a video allows, I'm on Substack, QR code on the screen, or just wesodonnell.com. If you don't mind me, I'm gonna go read from my bookshelf, which is definitely not a green screen and is very, very real. And as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.